This is Eusebio Leal. For the last 15 years, Leal has been the inspiration behind the restoration of Old Havana. In the 1960s and 70s, Old Havana was falling apart. The colonial seafront buildings were badly neglected. Today, restoration is well underway, and revived crafts are coming back to the city. To the people of Havana, one man is responsible, Eusebio Leal. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the sugar and tobacco barons of this Spanish colony created a city once called the Paris of the Caribbean. Rich traders built mansions and theatres, and their taxes paid for imposing government buildings. The building boom continued after independence, right up to the Art Deco of the 1930s. In 1959, Fidel Castro took power with his own brand of socialism. Those palaces and mansions became social housing projects. Fairer, perhaps. Fatal to the architecture, certainly.
If a nation loses its memory, it loses everything. History has proven this. Countries and peoples who have forgotten their past no longer exist, or they have become an amalgam of things and are no longer nations.
The monastery of San Ignacio is a classic example of the problems Leal faces.
All the rooms used to be nuns' cells. They began to be occupied as dwellings by the locals. Then families began to grow, and that is how the whole process of families living in cells no more than 3 by 5 meters developed. We arrived here in 2001. There were 59 families here, so 59 families meant 80 dwellings, because the average family involved 13 individuals.
Since 1994, under the leadership of Eusebio Leal, the city has gone through a transformation to save its heritage. Hundreds of buildings have been restored, which attracts tourists and their hard currency, the main source of revenue for the restoration.
This project was born out of the funds raised by hundreds of thousands of tourists visiting. We have used these funds in a very direct way for the restoration, without involving the central government.
Today, Leal is presiding over a ceremony where an old Cuban flag from before the revolution is being returned to the country by the grandson of a US general. Leal feels these symbols of old Cuba have new meaning for those living in Havana today. He's an academic who's accepted the government's offer to become a state official, with a brief to reverse the decay of his beloved colonial Havana. Leal inherited an office with almost no resources, but he's proved adept at working inside the bureaucracy, finding funds and mobilizing a dedicated workforce who share his commitment to see old Havana flourish.
De una oficina que nació con apenas un puñado de personas.
From an office initially manned by a handful of people, it has become a great big family with more than 13,000 workers, and I can assure you that 50% of them are residents of Old Havana. So these same workers who yesterday were our neighbours, today are our workers and send their children to our restored schools, which are maintained by us.
Some people did not believe in this building work and made fun of us. They said, keep on collecting stones, keep on collecting rubble, this will run and run. But now when they walk by and they see this beautiful building, how good it looks, everyone's mouth's open.
In this communist state, everything is owned by the government. But rules have been relaxed to create free enterprise business partnerships. There are more than 200 separate restoration projects underway that aim to improve living conditions for the residents. Under Leal's management, 1/3 of Old Havana has now been completely restored.
In 1994, the law redefined the function of the Historical Buildings Office. It had to be capable of balancing community development with restoration of historical buildings. It had to create employment and create dwellings in the historic centre.
One of Leal's pet projects is the restoration of the Martí Theatre, built in 1884.
He dreams about the theatre being finished. He sees the curtain rising. He's hoping to celebrate his 70th birthday here. So this is a very, very special work for him. And because of this, we put in a lot of love into our labour.
Wherever you go in Cuba, you hear people say, we need Leal here. In the center, they need Leal. In the carro, they need Leal. Everybody needs Leal. We need a lot of Leals.
We are dedicated to building and creating. We believe in this, and it is very powerful. Perhaps Old Havana is a portrait, not of what we have resisted, but of what we've been able to achieve. The most appropriate words are those of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, when he said, "The essential is invisible to our eyes."
Es invisible a los ojos.